Colin, I want to start your story when you went out to Bourke to a Bible college. What were you doing out there and why did you go?
Yeah, well, we need to explain Bourke,
Yep.
I think, because it's, and around a fire seems like a very good place to talk about Bourke. So you've got outback New South Wales, a very unlikely place for a boy who grew up in Peakhurst to find his way out there with his young bride. Robin and I have been married for 18 months, and but we had a couple of friends who'd gone out there, and we'd thought about going to Bible college, and Cornerstone was not your traditional Bible college. Yep. In that it was a Christian community that had work, mission, study and community as their sort of four tenets. So you worked out there, I worked in the school out there, and in holidays I chipped out in the cotton fields, chipping out weeds and flagging for the crop dusters and so forth. So we were in a community, so there's just 20 students there. We were studying only half the day. Yep. And we'd be involved in doing mission around town with the Christian church, Bourke Christian Church there. So we really wanted an experience that didn't just fill our heads. We'd had a good experience of church back in Sydney and a solid sort of theological, Bible-based experience. But we just wanted that faith with the legs to take it into life.
What imprint did that leave on you, Colin?
It's hard. I mean, it's hard to imagine life without that Cornerstone experience. It was a very unlikely, change of plan for our lives. I could see my teaching stretching out. I was a primary teacher, stretching out maybe into the distance before we went there. And then I probably thought, if you go to Bible college, there'll be some sort of ministry, church-based ministry that I'd be involved in. And but I brought my guitar along and I wrote songs about what I saw out there, which had a deep impact on me. I'd always loved singer-songwriters, folk music, songs. My expression, my latest version is songs you can see. I love that sort of song, and I found myself seeing so much and putting that into song that just for the purposes of journaling, just for creative outlet.
Did you see music as a career or ministry?
No.
That
was
knocking out a few songs.
That's right, and I'd play them on the veranda or play them at a barbecue, or some of the community and locals said, "Oh, we'd love a copy of that," and so I sang them at a barbecue with a cassette set up and and dubbed them off in the double cassette deck, and so there's copies of me singing in the Buster's lounge room, the cassette, some of these songs, and then it was just at that level, and then someone said, "Oh, you should enter some songs in Tamworth."
Yep.
Didn't know anything about the Country Music Festival there, and rang the tourist bureau. Like, who do you ring in Tamworth? Ring Tamworth and ask them. And they put me onto the radio station. The radio station said, "You could enter this talent quest." So I sent up some songs, and one of those won a little award, a little statuette, and. I thought, that was my introduction to country music. I felt like a bit of a fake. I still do, really. The Irishman from Peakhurst who wins a golden guitar. That was yet to come. Yeah. But it was really just making these little cassettes. A lounge room cassette I handed to a guy who came through the second year that we were with Cornerstone. We're in the Central West, so wheat and sheep country, not outback, but another rich experience personally and spiritually, but also creatively, another scene full of new faces and places and stories. And that guy wrote back to me and said, I reckon you should make a record. I'd love to produce it. I've played the songs to my publisher and my record company, and they thought, these songs are good. Yeah, you should see what you can do with this. It wasn't a big cigar or anything. It was just pretty low key, but I carried that letter around in my back pocket in town, and I'd say, "Have a look what old mate wrote back to me." John Kane is his name. And so when we got back to Sydney, music became the thing that and I think this is the thing about the Cornerstone experience for us, was the phrase was, "Let your natural life be spiritual and your spiritual life be natural." That was on the back of the old Austin bus out there. And that was really what we wanted from it. So I suppose if you are holding your breath thinking, Colin's going to get into church ministry, or he's going to become a youth minister or a kids minister, or, you know, he's going to go on to further study or something, and then he gets involved in the music industry. It's like, oh, well, that's a bit of a waste, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's so and it wasn't. I've just been grateful for my entire career that a conversation, a bit like our conversation now, it was on a veranda with Laurie McIntosh, who started Cornerstone, and talking about whether we'd go or not, the Easter before we did. He said, yeah, you know, it seems to me very dangerous. So as we get older, beware the danger. If you say it seems to me, it carries a lot of weight the older you get. Seems to me, Karl, you know, it's, yeah. But Laurie said, and quite honestly and genuinely and very helpfully, it seems to me, Colin, you're a bit like the rich young ruler, where you could seek first the kingdom of God. You could sort of leave some of the things that have been your expectations of what life might hold, and just let that be the reason that you came, and see what God has for you and Robin in this experience. And you know, how did you get into the music industry? Well, that conversation had an awful lot to do with it.
Yeah.
So I wasn't seeking the things of the world. I was getting involved in the music industry in the adventure of seeking first the kingdom of God.
When did you feel like, gosh, I think I've come in close to making it? Was that winning a golden guitar? Was it like, you know...
I'll tell you when I felt like I came pretty close to not making it.
Let's start there.
Yeah, because it, you know, your former neck of the woods, you know, it was around the Sutherland Shire in Sydney, you know, where I still live, that this was unfolding. There was interest from this publisher. I'd made some demos. They'd taken them to ABC Music. The head of ABC Music said, yes, we'd like to sign you. And they can tend to be a bit tardy on the old wet the ink, you know, their signature on the contract. So the studios were booked and all that stuff. 2 weeks out, I get a call from John, who was producing, and said, they've pulled the plug. There was a bit of a meltdown in ABC. All projects were off. You know, it stopped. And I thought, this isn't, you know, we just had our first baby and nothing was really coming together, and I just thought, I've got to provide for my family. I was doing a bit of casual teaching, and so we met at the RSL club at Sutherland, John and I said, John, sorry, this is it. I just think we'll have to say, nice try. You know, I got to be a grown up. That was on the Thursday, and on the Friday I was going to tell Paul Cochran, who was a boss of primary at Inverborough, I was going to take a job there as year 5 the next year, 1991. And then I rang Laurie, my mate on the veranda, seek first the kingdom of God guy. And Laurie said, I told him, look, I got to look after my family and got to be a responsible grown up and all that, expecting him to say, well, you gave it a go and they're good on you. But Laurie said, it seems to me...
There's that phrase again.
This seems to me this hasn't run its course. That's just my instinct. And I think you'll spend the rest of your life wondering what would have happened if it did run its course. So I think you might be pulling the plug a little early on this. So I rang Paul and said, I won't take the job. And I rang John and he said, it's back on. It's back on. I mean, there was no record deal.
Yeah.
And interestingly, and this is where just this lovely collusion of contacts, friends, believers in what you do, not necessarily Christian believers. So I signed to the publisher on the basis of having a record deal, and and now they had this writer, this young, unproven writer with no record deal. And the guy who I still have contact with, Graham Thompson, was having drinks with he's the professional manager with the boss of the publishing company. And he said, what are you going to do about Bucko? Bucko, my nickname. And he said, you should pay for his record. He said, I don't want to pay for a record, I'm a publisher. He said, no, you should pay for the record. Well, they'd had a couple of sherbets and he went, yeah, okay. And then he said, you'll forget this. So he pulled out a pen and on the back of a coaster, and he's actually emailed me the picture of the coaster. So he said, write it down, I will pay for Bucko's record, signed Bob Ed. And then on Monday morning, he walked in and put it on his desk, and he said, "You're paying for Colin's record." And
A coaster is a contract.
and he went, "Oh," you know, we probably don't want to repeat what he said, but you know, that again is just, you know, that's got the Lord's fingerprints all over it, and having a conviction that the Lord opens the doors, and there's great stories behind that, and there's, you know, knockbacks and sadness and difficulties and hardships as well, but it's a great feeling to know that your life, your career is in divine hands, and that way it's going to be okay. You're safe.